What is up, everybody? It's a special Sunday edition of the Run Your Mouth podcast. Here celebrating Hanukkah. I currently smell like a grease fire. I went over to kid's house, gave the kids some toys, got some nice smiles out of them. I mean, like my sister's kids. I didn't go to an orphanage. I'm not that nice of a person. But anyways, we got a bunch of stuff to talk about, and we're not doing a lot of announcements because this is an announcement-less show. However, welcome to the first ever paywalled episode, and I have the highest level condemnations that have ever been given out on the Run Your Mouth podcast. As you guys know, I do tour this fine country of ours. I interact with all these businesses. They're doing everything they can to ram things up your anus. And I give out condemnations. And some of the experiences I had this past weekend are warranting the highest level condemnations that have ever been given out. But we can't meander. We can't waste precious time at the beginning of the show talking about nonsense topics like this because we're going to be algorithm friendly in 2026. This has to start becoming a profitable endeavor. And so we're changing gears. We believe in global warming now. If you didn't get the COVID vaccine, it's because you're a sociopath who wanted to kill other people. Israel actually should be bombing more of Gaza. And you can't do announcements at the beginning of a show because we're an algorithm-friendly enterprise over here at the Run Your Mouth podcast. It took 10 years of being shadow banned by the algorithms to make a hard heel turn for 2026 and make it your New Year's resolution to be more algorithm-friendly. Remove any of the filthy jokes from the beginning of the show. Don't have any swear words. And don't make any announcements. And that's the way we're operating the show now. We're an algorithm-friendly podcast. Hoping to be more inclusive to all and to be get better displays across all media platforms. So for anybody interested, you can go to robbernsteincomedy.com. We're going to continue to run through all the news, and then you can get my travel tips so you don't have to run in, lucky for you guys, I'm out here on a budget, traveling the country, interfacing with all these businesses, and I can give you some secretive tips that are going to save a whole lot of hassle in your life. So for $5, you can catch the last 10 minutes of the episode, and for everybody else, we're going to dive right into the news to, keep the whole thing algorithm-friendly. First, I'm not even going to read it. Yeah, Runaway Slav, you got to be more algorithm-friendly for the first couple minutes of the show. I appreciate your comment. It's a funny comment, but, we're trying to be algorithm-friendly now. All right, so let's get into it. Let's get right into some of the news topics. And to start today's show, we have the return of the most annoying storyline ever. And here you have it. Kilmar Abrego Garcia has been released from an ICE detention facility. And I think he was released to his brother or his uncle, some shit like that. But he's back in the wild, everybody. The MS-13 known terrorist to the Trump administration, and the Trump administration is so bad at doling out justice and keeping us safe from known MS-13 members that he's back on the streets giving compelling speeches. And now listen, if you wanted to see this man freed and you thought it was a shame that he got sent to El Salvador, don't start celebrating already because, if for all we know, he's going to get out of jail and return right back to his MS-13 ways. He's going to be kidnapping people, sending them over the border, selling drugs, and you don't want to look like an asshole in a year from now when it turns out that this was a story of a liberal judge who put a criminal back on the streets, even though they haven't actually proved he's part of MS-13, and they should probably investigate the police department that pulled him over on the side of the road and then just let him go, and the entire Biden criminal justice system of the FBI and everybody else, that incidents like that could have been recorded and people would just look the other way. But, forget all that. The point is, you got a liberal judge, put him back on the streets, and it's the most annoying storyline ever because we're not sure. So let's see what the judge had to say. And once again, liberal judge appointed by Obama. And so who knows? Maybe this guy's going to be responsible in a year from now when this guy goes back to a life of crime. But here's what the judge said. Although respondents may eventually get it right, they have not as of today. Thus, Abrego Garcia's detention for the stated purpose of third country removal cannot continue. And so on that basis, of the sloppiness of the Donald Trump administration, this judge is saying he has to be released. And now this was just some really fun phone sales type stuff, because what they were doing with this guy is they were threatening him that I guess if he admitted to crimes or MS-13 or whatever else, they would deport him to Costa Rica. And if not, they were saying that they were going to be deporting him off to a less friendly area in the middle of Africa. And apparently they kept telling the judge that Costa Rica wouldn't take him, but there's all these other African countries that would take him, and he needs to be deported immediately, and so we got to send him to one of these African countries. But this is according to the judge. The judge found that to be untrue, writing in Thursday's ruling that the Trump administration affirmatively misled the tribunal by suggesting otherwise. This evidently remained an inconvenient truth for respondents being the Trump Justice Department, but more to the point, respondents' persistent refusal to acknowledge Costa Rica as a viable removal option, their threats to send Albrego Garcia to African countries that never agreed to take him. I think that that's kind of funny, that the judge actually took the time to call up the African countries and be like, hey, did you guys agree to take this guy? And they're like, no. And their misrepresentation to the court that Liberia is now the only country available to Abrego Garcia all reflect that whatever purpose was behind his detention, it was not for the basic purpose of timely third country removal, the judge continued. So it sounds like, the lawyer for Trump was being a lawyer and was saying we're not going to prove that he's MS-13, but he's not supposed to be in the country. We got to remove him immediately, and the only way that we can remove him immediately, and we have to detain him for immediate removal, but Costa Rica, he can't go there, and these other African countries said they would take him until, I guess, the judge called them, or the judge is lying. I don't know that we'll ever get the full story here, but the world's most annoying storyline is back in the news. And for those of you guys who swore up and down that the Trump administration definitely knew that this guy was MS-13, well, for now, he's back and freed. We'll see how long it lasts, but that's where we're at for now. Another embarrassing one for Donald Trump is, we got to play this video. We'll pull the CNN thing for those of you guys that just listen to the show. For those of you that want to watch along, he's talking in Spanish, and you can read the subtitles. For everyone else, I'll read it on the bottom. But they somehow managed to find the Jewish MS-13 member of all time, and that he's out there now being like, thankfully, I am freed. I get to spend Christmas with my family, and I will fight injustices against our government because of the it's not very MS-13-y. This is very liberal white lady / sociopath or Jewy of getting out there and going, guys, I'm a sign of injustice for everybody. He took good lawyer notes. Usually your lawyers are like, listen, I need you to say absolutely nothing because you're just going to make things worse. Let us do the talking for you. Well, this chubby MS-13 member has the lingo. He got good coaching from his lawyers, and he's slick enough at this game that the lawyers were like, you get out there and you talk your truth. And he's up there full-fledged going, I will be a sign for all of you about the injustices of the United States government and how embarrassing to the Trump administration. Sent him right down to El Salvador, did not prove that he was actually MS-13. We're completely adamant about it, and now he's back free and in front of television cameras where even the New York Post is playing this video. But let's give it a watch. I'll read it for people that are just listening. But I think it's worth actually playing the entire thing.
Ayer que fui liberado, lo primero que hice y lo único que hice es disfrutar a mi familia. Por estos tiempos que estamos viviendo, tiempos de Navidad, que la armonía, el amor, la paz, es amor estar en familia. Y eso es lo que yo hice, estar con mi familia, que son todo para mí. Y ahora estoy aquí de pie frente a ustedes y la lucha seguirá. Yo seguiré de pie, no le bajaré la cabeza a nadie. Siempre estaré de pie sobre todas las injusticias que ha hecho este gobierno.
Give this guy a job on CNN. I mean, talk about the Oscar performance of the year. Is getting out there after all this thing's going on and being able to, with the straight, I'm just a good, wholesome Christian family man. And finally, the justices that has been served, that I can finally spend Christmas with my family. All right. When he starts making road trips to Tennessee, LOL. Yeah, we'll see. We shall see how the most annoying storyline ever plays out. I'm sure Runaway Slav is on the side of justice here and happy that that this man got due process and that since they weren't able to prove that he was MS-13, he's freed. I'm sure that's what Runaway Slav has to say. He's illegal. That's criminal enough. And to me, they are all MS-13. That checks out. The key word there was to me. Rico Rose Hopeful Voluntaris. He ain't free. Well, I guess if you want to go with a more autistic definition of that, he still is, I guess, under the watch of his family member, and he might get pulled back in. But I don't know. He doesn't seem to be in a prison cell right there. Seems to be talking in front of the television cameras and seems to be temporarily released until they can bring a new court case up against him. So I don't know what you mean by ain't free. John Popik, Sunday Night RYM, let's go. That's right. All right, let's move on to our next topic, brought to you by YoKratom.com, home of the $60 kilo, and the only place in the entire world you can get a full kilo of kratom for just $60. All right, now, in other embarrassing news for the Donald Trump administration, and I was all for going after Latita James. Go after the people that went after Donald Trump with all those phony lawsuits. I'm all for it. Pull Jack Smith in, find out about the Crossfire Hurricane, go after them for wiretapping senators' phones or doing the data collection on them. Go after all these people. But they're 0 for, let's say 0 for 4 right now, because I'm gonna do the count as 2 tries against James Comey, both getting thrown out, and now 2 attempts against Latita James, both being thrown out. But this is a second grand jury that is refusing to indict New York Attorney General Latita James. And I think what's particularly embarrassing about this is that apparently most of the time when the feds actually want to prosecute people, they're pretty good at it once it gets there, and that's why they mostly get plea agreements from people. But in this case, usually, I don't think it's too often that they're trying to put together a case and it gets in front of a grand jury and then it doesn't move past there. So the latest on Latita James is that in terms of the Donald Trump administration, both after showing hands of tattoos and saying this guy certainly is MS-13. 100% he's MS-13. No, we're not going to prove he's MS-13, but he was 100% MS-13. The latest is that guy's freed for now. We'll see how it plays out. And the latest is that the other court cases that they're bringing against the political enemies of Donald Trump, who do deserve the wrath of the Justice Department and probably deserve to be in trouble. Sloppy operations by Donald Trump, and that he's 0 for 4 in terms of that. So if you guys were excited about, even brushing the Epstein stuff under the rug, but just more directly going after Donald Trump's personal political enemies, and if he was going to rack up any victories there, at least thus far, it's not looking good. All right, let's move on to another topic. And guys, I've talked about this before on the show. And listen, sometimes we throw out some jokes. Sometimes we don't take a hard opinion, like the previous one, where I'm telling you I don't know if the guy was or wasn't an MS-13. Certainly didn't seem like a great guy. Really looked like he was certainly trafficking people through Tennessee, and that the Biden administration was had such a racket going that incidents like that were not investigated or people didn't go to jail for engaging in such conduct. And our criminal enforcement agencies, as in the cops, are just like, well, I don't want to deal with this. I'll just let the feds know. And they're like, all right, well, that's not the kind of thing that we concern ourselves with. I mean, you walk into a building on January 6th and you take pictures, we'll throw you in jail for your life. But if you want to shove a bunch of people in your car and coyote them across state lines, that's not the kind of thing that we're worried about. We're trying to sell domestic terrorism storylines. So listen, there's a lot of things that we don't take firm opinions on, or we raise an issue and we just want to bring up a bunch of jokes. But this is something we've spoken about on the show before. I don't think that there's enough awareness amongst the American people for how big of a problem this is. And so I put it on all of you, the listeners of the Run Your Mouth podcast, sit down this holiday season, do some self-reflection, and really look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself if you're doing enough to keep the retarded kids in your neighborhood safe from the FBI. I'm sure you know that one kid who's walking around in the afternoon And are you keeping an eye on him to make sure that FBI agents don't go, ooh, there's a sucker. There's someone I can entrap. There's someone I can promise of tales of glory. And I don't even remember what the last storyline was. I do remember I went off on the Gretchen Whitmer kidnapping thing, and that entire thing looked like entrapment of a bunch of dorks sitting around in a basement drinking and pretending like they're part of a cool gang. And then some FBI is like, oh, I'm really handsome. You guys want to get chicks like I get chicks? You can go find that one. That was back in the shed back in the day. I'm wearing a stupid military helmet. I'm going to have to go down the Run Your Mouth archive, maybe talk to Andrew, who runs my website, robbernsteincomedy.com, and go through the transcripts and find the other instant of a retarded kid who was entrapped and then framed by the FBI for crimes. But it's on all of us to spread the word this holiday season and to let people with children of mental disabilities know that their children are at risk for being patsies for FBI crimes. And so we've all been wondering what actually happened on January 6th. What was the level of government involvement? To what extent were they trying to sell a domestic terrorism storyline to remove all of our freedoms? And just last week, they finally apparently found the guy who was involved with the pipe bombings, and it was just because the Biden administration and the Biden and the FBI were so bad at police work that finally the new FBI could just look at the information and crack that case wide open. And so here is Thomas Massie. It's a long tweet thread, but I believe that it is worth reading. I'm going to walk a little closer to the computer so I can actually read it. You guys can look at the blank logo of Run Your Mouth right here while I go over there and just and read the thing. Or maybe I'll pivot the camera. We'll pivot the camera to the old school Run Your Mouth banner and get a closer. Let's see if that works. All right, yeah. Side panel view. All right, I like this. You guys can see my big Jew nose as I get closer and I read this. Is that working? All right. Last night, I received a disclosure from a new FBI whistleblower regarding the January 6th bomb case. This is the third disclosure I've received from current and former employees of the government regarding the pipe bomb case in recent weeks. These brave, moral people could lose their jobs and wreck their careers, but they care deeply for our country. So, at the risk of editorializing, I will summarize what I learned from this newest disclosure in order not to disclose the identity of this whistleblower. The community where the suspect was arrested is populated with several employees of the FBI, Secret Service, and police. Many of them have observed the suspect on walks over the years. He wanders around his neighborhood several times a day while walking a dog. Other than walking his dog, he doesn't engage in any activities outside of his home. He does not interact with anyone. He doesn't wave or acknowledge other people or even say hello. He doesn't even look at other people when he walks by. He appears to live in his own world. All right, let's continue. Now's when it's going to start getting juicy. And let's try not to fall over all the equipment here. And then we'll go, we'll take some comments and see what you guys think of this crazy FBI storyline. All right. He's never, actually, you know what? We'll just take a peek at the comments so you guys can be like, oh, he just lost all of the sound. All right, I didn't lose all the sound when I walked over there. Look at that. You can walk with your microphone and not lose all the sound, and you can pretend like you got two camera angles in the studio. All right, he's never been observed walking around in an angry or agitated state. His demeanor is detached and vacant. He's always worn headphones when walking around the neighborhood. It's possible that he's using headphones to drown out any surrounding noises. He doesn't appear to be interested in anything or even get interested in things that are happening around him. His behavior is awkward. It's obvious he has a mental disability. You guys catch that? That's the important part. And likely lives in a permanently vulnerable intellectual and emotional state. It's well known that individuals with mental conditions are susceptible to providing inaccurate and unwarranted confessions. He doesn't drive his car very often. Based on the observation of several neighbors, the suspect does not appear to have the mental acumen to plan, prepare, and execute a complex bombing plot by himself. On November 13th, the FBI conducted a surveillance operation on the suspect's street, but the surveillance was easily identifiable to many in the area. All right, so if you're not following, you've got FBI people living in a neighborhood, realizing they got a retarded kid there, and being like, calling up the other FBI agents, like, hey, are we still looking for a guy that we can pin this on? Because, you know, I got some retarded kid in my neighborhood, and no one seems to care that he's here. I feel like we could blame it on him. It's, allegedly. All right, and now here comes the most damning evidence of that this would seem to have not actually been a person that the FBI would have been threatened by. And so here's the last piece of information on this. Not only were neighbors not evacuated during the arrest in search of the alleged bomber's home, they were required to remain in their homes if the suspect had in fact been engaged in making bombs and stockpiling bomb materials. The proper safety precautions were not taken. My personal conclusion, the FBI disclosing this information to me doesn't believe the FBI has arrested a person who's capable or motivated or even interested enough in affairs outside of his own small world to execute the J6 bomb plot on his own. And so there you have it. Thomas Massie, best of the best, even if it's just to engage in interesting conspiracies and to raise more awareness of that retarded kids in your neighborhood might be at risk of falling prey or being preyed on by the FBI and either being entrapped into crimes or used as patsy for crimes, particularly, I guess, if they can link you to supporting Donald Trump, which is odd coming from Kash Patel. But I'll put it to you guys. How many of you guys were buying the storyline that after all these years, this conservative who contested the election and also happens to be either mentally handicapped and black was actually the person who did it? But, bless Thomas Massie. The guy actually works in government, and even if that is just pure conspiracy, to be in Congress and be spinning tales like that and raising skepticism of the government and awareness that kids in your area could be at risk for being entrapped by the FBI, even if he's dead wrong, I'll still give credit for it. All right. Let's take some comments here. Robbie, when are you bringing the porch tour to Australia? No such plans. I think if anything next year, we're going to be consolidating the porches, not venturing farther for porches. But we'll see. Now that we're an algorithm-friendly show, who knows? Maybe we'll be selling out stadiums and arenas and porching giant lawns and turning every single day of the weekend into Woodstock in random locations. And we already do have an official Porch Tour caravan, which is Max, the OG Porch, has bought the first RV for the people who will be following the tour. And so, it's we're if you'll build it, a couple people might show up to a lawn type mentality. And it's looking like next year Porch Tour will probably be consolidated. But now that we're becoming algorithm friendly, who knows? Maybe we'll make it all the way to Australia. TY5020. When they bring in Obama for Russiagate, when they taking down health officials for COVID, does the FBI need to go because of Jan 6 or revelations, or just certain employees of the FBI? I could settle for either. Poet Fisherman. Obviously, the FBI's narrative is horseradish. I got to be honest, I kind of like horseradish. I think you mean horse shit. I'd be okay with horse shit. I know you're trying to keep it algorithm friendly, but I'm just saying let's not disparage horseradish and compare it to the FBI. Horseradish is great. Actually, horseradish is a good sign that a restaurant knows what they're doing. Now, if it's like a horseradish sauce, then it's a little more borderline because they're adding the mayo to it. It's kind of like cheating. But like typically speaking, if you see like some sort of like beef or meatball thing and they're offering like some sort of like a horseradish on it, you know that they know what they're doing. All right. So while I agree with where you're coming from, and I even like the way that you're trying to groove with our new, more algorithm-friendly atmosphere, and so you didn't want to use the word horse shit, I'm just saying let's not disparage horseradish. All right? It's best to assume anytime they say anything, it's a lie or contains heavy spin for narrative control. All right, horsey sauce from Arby's? No, that's you might as well eat your friend's cum on your sandwich. If you were trying to figure out what's more disgusting, firstly, Arby's meat tastes like somebody else's boogers. Okay, I don't remember ever tasting anyone else's boogers. I remember once as a kid tasting mine because I was like, why are these other kids eating their boogers? Like, this is the grossest thing ever. And never did again learn that lesson. But I learned it again when I went to Arby's, and I'm like, that's the first time I've tasted something that tasted slimy and salty like that since that time when I was 7 years old and I tried my boogers. And the horsey sauce to go with it is just doubling down on consuming the most disgusting thing available in this country. Runaway Slav, fresh grated horseradish helps clear sinuses and works better than ivermectin. All right, that's talk about a not algorithm friendly comment, but you're endorsing horseradish, so I will agree with you on that. Mike Tucker, BPG, blah, blah, blah. Fresh horseradish and a bit of A1 mixed is worth a try. Just saying. All right, I've never tried that, but I do see what you're going for. I'd like further clarification on what you're putting that on. All right, here's another just quick story. So this is from World Travel and Tourism Council. I don't know how credited that is. I was mostly just doing a quick glance with Donald Trump's new policy of really sifting through people's social media presence and apparently forcing them to fill out forms that require a lot of information. This is at least one, headline on an article, because I just see people being like, I don't feel like filling out paperwork, and I don't even understand it. Like, just scrape their media profiles. I understand where the government's coming from, and listen, I agree with you guys. I like more freedom, and but I fully understand. Listen, there's some things that you have to criticize and things that make sense. People are coming to visit the country, and you want to know who the hell they are, and potentially if they might have ties to terrorism or other things. The problem is we all know the way this is going to be used. These people are trying to come here and spend money, and there's probably really good ways to figure out if they've got ties to terrorist networks. And I don't know if this is just to keep people that don't like Israel out of the way. We'll see the way it gets implemented. But you want people coming to the country to spend money here. Guys, this shouldn't be an argument like tariffs or something. All of your guys' stuff is about how money needs to stay in this economy and it needs to be spent here. I'm fairly certain. Are you guys against tourists coming into the country, clogging up Times Square, taking too many pictures, and spending money at American businesses? Do you guys so hate foreigners you don't even want them taking vacations here? And maybe you're right. Maybe all of my flights would be cheaper, and every hotel I went to would have more available rooms, and Priceline would be better. Maybe you're right. Maybe no tourists coming into the country would actually help the porching bottom line of all the expenses that I face. And if we took $12 billion out of international travel spend this year, maybe we'd see more discounts and less demand for airlines and. Or it might go the other way. Without all that money coming in, they got to figure out where to get more money out of us. I don't really know the economics of that. But, just in an effort for a practical solution, just fucking scrape their profiles. Why do you got to make people fill out forms? You don't got to turn into the doctor's office where I got to fill out the form online to then come in and fill out the form again and then go into a room with the nurse, and the nurse has to ask me all the questions that I already put into the form for the secondary nurse to come in so that you can finally just see the doctor who's going to ask you the exact same questions. At some point, it's like, how much paperwork do I need to do? And listen, we can all agree with the paperwork-free government system where you don't just have to fill out forms so they can bitch you out and go, hey, I own you, so that people are like, all right, I'll just go vacation somewhere else. I understand it. You're filling out your visa to come in here, and they tell you got to declare what all your social media profiles and handles, and then they use their supercomputers and they go back, and even if you remove posts or whatever, I'm sure they got a way to find all of that. Listen, the NSA's in all of our phones. They know everything we're doing all the time. They just need an excuse to go look at it, and so you got to click some box that you agree that they're gonna look at your social handles and make sure that you're safe to visit the country, blah blah blah, whatever, and then just do all your goofy backdoor supercomputer Palantir tricks and get all the information and just keep people from having to do all the paperwork. I'm not saying don't ask people for their social media handles. I'm saying if you're going to force them to fill out these really intrusive forms, you're going to hurt money coming into the country. All right. The picture of the Chicago Bean is not bring tourism. If so, these people are idiots, and we're still coming no matter what. I got to tell you, when I go to Chicago, I like to go to Millennial Park, and I like to look at the Bean. And I don't find too many downtown areas all that impressive. New Orleans, I think, is the funnest city in America. Salt Lake City is probably the most beautiful and has the most accessible great skiing. I don't know if it's the absolute best skiing I've ever done, but in terms of accessibility to the airport, those Mormons, they run a good operation. If you're drinking up a storm, I used to like New York City a lot, not so much anymore. But in terms of like the random bullshit that they put down at like the St. Louis Arch, not all that interesting to look at. The Bean's pretty cool. I don't know why you're hating on the Bean. a ton of foreigners go to the Bean and Madison Avenue. There you go. You get from a Chicago local and native letting you know that the Bean is, in fact, a decent tourist attraction, and people do come out for it. And it's free. I like free. You get to walk through the park and look at a free sculpture. It's not bad. All right, now let's move on to the couple pictures that were released. I think they probably have all been released already. But, there's a little drip on stuff coming out having to do with Epstein. And I thought that this was a fun spin from the New York Post because, obviously, I think any affiliations with Epstein are going to look bad. And there's going to be levels to it. There's going to be some people that just thought they were showing up to a party. Some people that were doing a lot of business with him. Some people that were continuing to do business with him after he was already a known sexual predator, which already becomes a little bit more of a moral issue, or a little bit more of where you're going to get social shame for it. But there's going to be different levels of engagement. And, not everyone that met with Jeffrey Epstein is going to have been a creep. That's the way it is. But the affiliations aren't great. And you got to love the spin of the New York Post after you get this picture of Donald Trump, I think, at an Epstein party with a whole bunch of models. And I laughed at this headline. Very gentlemanly. Unredacted Trump photos from Epstein files dump reveal glamorous group of adult models. And I guess it's a fair spin. Pictures are coming out. You got a picture with Donald Trump, and he's with a bunch of very beautiful women at an Epstein party, but none of them are kids. I guess that's true. But it's an interesting spin where you're like, look, these guys really were friends. Or, look, there's even more and more pictures of them hanging out. And then to spin it of that just proves how good Donald Trump is. Maybe that's a fair take. Look, Donald Trump is such a good guy that when he went to the Epstein story parties and kids were available, he stuck with the adults. All right, this is a joke this is an AI joke. All right, this is not my joke. I put the prompt in. I asked for 20 responses. I read one. I was like, that's pretty funny. But here's an AI joke for you guys. Bannon, Epstein, and Woody Allen walk into a bar. You guys remember these jokes. Let's start again. So you got Steve Bannon, Jeffrey Epstein, Woody Allen walk into a bar, and the bartender says, "Sorry, guys, we don't serve minors here." And then here was one more. You got this of the pictures that came out. You got this glove, and of course, if the glove fits, Alan Dershowitz had something to do with it. Put that in a bumper sticker with that picture. Maybe I'll start selling that on my website, robbernsteinmerch.com. Now that we're algorithm friendly, we'll be able to sell more merch and stuff. All right, let's move on and trash the Democrats. That's enough of trashing the Republicans for one day. We can move on and, we could trash the Democrats a little bit. And so here you have Tim Walz, and he's trying to justify all of the money that got sent over to Somalian terrorists. And every single line of this is beautifully stupid. And so let's read it and comment. All right. We are a state that chooses not to let people go hungry or homeless or uneducated. All right. You guys are all for forced wealth redistribution and a heavily socialist environment in order to ensure that the government steps in and redistributes wealth so that the poor will not go hungry, homeless, or uneducated. Walz said in his address, however, that generosity has been taken advantage of by an organized group of fraudsters and criminals. Minnesota's longstanding high standards of integrity of public funds go hand in hand with a culture of generosity. You can't have one without the other. And so now here's the problem here. Your pitch is government's going to engage in fourth wealth redistribution because you're better than the market or people's personal generosity at allocating the funds to people that need it. And so if you mismanage the funds and that instead of it going to people that need it, it gets spent to criminals who are engaging in fraud and just fleecing the taxpayer, then you actually got in the way of people's generosity helping people in need. In other words, people who are generous, if you got a culture of generosity, people might decide, hey, we need to have a local food bank, or hey, I would like to do something to help the homeless. And then if you step in and you go, listen, guys, I'm really good at this, so why don't you give me a job? And instead of you guys giving the charity, I'm going to have this prestigious position that comes with a lot of power. And I will do this for you guys because I can see you guys like being in an environment of generosity. So what I'll do is I'm going to step in, I'll be in charge, and I'll make sure that the funds go to people that need it. And then you have a failure where instead of helping the poor, you're actually taking the generosity of other people and you're giving it to fraudsters. You don't get to turn around and go, well, that's the problem of the generosity is that it allowed for fraudsters. No, you stepping into the role of going, I will give out this money on your behalf, and then not being a good steward of that money in the job that you sold people on, that it was important for you to give out those funds instead of people doing it directly. You don't get to turn around and go, oh, it's a function of we were fleeced because of the generosity. No, you stepped in and said that you were going to manage this and that government needs to manage it and that other people can't need to have their money taken from them so that government can step in and be a better provider to the poor. And then you give it over to fraudsters. This is showcasing the fact that we should not have these government programs because you guys are not better at allocating these resources. Let's continue. This next paragraph is worse. Walz warned that anyone in Minnesota who commits fraud is going to prison eventually. You got to love the confidence. Guys, we here at government are so bad at governing and doing our job, it's going to take us a little bit of time to actually get all these people if we can even do it. That's the level of confidence Tim Walz has in his government and his ability to actually get things done, is that, listen, guys, I understand everyone's mad because, we're forcefully engaging in wealth redistribution. I'm sure that Minnesota and these areas probably have more debt and can't also afford all these programs, so they're also spending money that doesn't exist and we don't have on the basis of whatever other stupid idea of growth. I don't know. But anyways, included in the stupidity of his pitch for why we need government and why he needs to be in government is that, don't worry, we're going to get them eventually. Doesn't even sound that confident. He noted that federal funding that went to state during the COVID-19 pandemic opened up the door to relax the guardrails and to have fraud committed. Oh, so you mean that thing that you all forced us to pretend was a bigger problem than it was is like what we're at fault for the government's response to COVID-19 and that created, like, in other words, since you guys reacted really stupidly to something that wasn't really a problem, it then created another yeah, so you're at fault for that too. The governor also announced Friday the appointment of Director of Program Integrity, who will work across the state government to strengthen fraud prevention and protect taxpayer dollars, according to a news release. So don't worry, guys. As long as we can spend more money and be even bigger as a government and give some other guys some fancy title, then we'll actually be able to stop this in the future. All right. I think that's enough of that topic. Let's plug another sponsor, sheathunderwear.com. Guys, if you're still looking for gifts for your loved ones, you got some hot chick, you want to see her in some nice undies, or you want to give yourself a nice gift because no one's buying you gifts this holiday season, and you want to make sure that your balls aren't sticking to your legs, your thighs aren't rubbing together, you want a pair of underwear that's going to last you a really long time. I still got my original pairs. No holes in them. Quality fabric. You guys want to go into the new year feeling fresh, feeling like a better man? Step up your game. Go to sheathunderwear.com. Use promo code RYM. You get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. And if you still got some last-minute gift shopping that you got to do, I can tell you that when I've ordered from them, I've gotten my pairs in a couple days, and they make for a solid gift. If you got some friend in your life and you know that he's been, complaining about chafed thighs, or he's put on some weight and you just know that his thighs are rubbing together and that his balls stink and that they're sticking to his legs, and he's got just like the mojo of a person sitting in that rot of stinky balls and balls stuck to legs, all you got to do is go to sheathunderwear.com, use promo code RYM, and you get yourself 20% off the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. All right, let's take a couple of comments. And then we got two more topics, and then we will go over to my paywall, which hopefully works, robbernsteincomedy.com, and we will do our most vicious condemnations to date. I don't even know how to rate these condemnations. Maybe it's going to be on a 1 to 10 scale, and these two condemnations are coming in at 11, but these are some serious condemnations and some warnings for all of you other consumers out there. All right, this is Shore 3846. How about help veterans, not another country? I'm okay with that. DJ Ginger G. What's up? Can't wait to see you in Denver. Anne Marie says, Happy Hanukkah. Everyone buy sheath underwear. You see? That's a great comment right there, everybody. That's true. And thank you for the reminder. I do have a show out in Denver, Colorado, doing Steamboat on Friday and Saturday. Skiing is not looking great. Unless we get some miracle snowfall, skiing is not looking great, which means I will probably do more partying and drinking after the shows, but those are always fun shows up there. So if you guys live outside of Denver and you want to come up to Steamboat, it's going to be a fun time hanging out with Kyle and the boys. And then Sunday, I've got my own show out at Inga's Alpine Tavern, 1 p.m. Going to be a day drinker before I get on a flight home. That one will sell out, but go grab tickets while you can. All right, back to Runaway Slav. Tim Wall's offspring is also getting called the same name he was in public, and I'm all for it. It's our civic duty to bully politicians. I'm okay with that. The Shove It 970. I don't know what they're calling his kid, though. Maybe I don't fully endorse that. All right. Apparently, the Sunday night time deterred the docking guy. You know, it's the weekend. He's got to get out there and dock. You know, he can't. It's during the work week when he's really making the monies that he can spend it on his weekend docking habit. And so if you go live on Sunday night, the docking guy, he's living his real life. He's you know what I mean? Some of you guys would drink all week if you could, but you got to go show up to work. And the docking guy, he spends all week just commenting, being like, one of these weekends, I'm going to get Rob out for one of my docking parties. But, you know, on the weekend, he's at the docking party, so you're not going to get him. All right. So, they're lowering interest rates. They passed another defense bill, almost $1 trillion. And you've got Donald Trump, always been a low interest rate guy. And so here's a couple articles from the Wall Street Journal. Give us a picture on where interest rates are going. But this is the first one. Reading not the whole article, it's just what I underlined. So if you guys are listening only and you want to know how much I edited out, you can go catch the videos, full videos on Spotify or the Run Your Mouth, Robbie the Fire channel on YouTube. All right. During a 45-minute meeting with Warsh on Wednesday at the White House, the president pressed Warsh on whether he could trust him to support interest rate cuts if he were chosen to lead the central bank. According to people familiar with the meeting, Trump in the journal interview confirmed that reporting. He thinks you have to lower interest rates, Trump said of Warsh, and so does everyone else that I've talked to. And so there you have it. Donald Trump is ensuring with an independent Fed that if whoever he brings in for this very prestigious job, that they're going to enact his agenda of lowering interest rates. So there you have it. That's an independent Fed for you. Is Donald Trump letting you know that he's conducting interviews, and the only way that anyone is getting an interview is if they sworn themselves to Donald Trump's low interest rates. There you go. Independent Fed. That's a great system there. That the guy who hires you, it's a little bit like when the credit agencies were being paid by the firms that they were giving the credit ratings to. And so, like, sure, you need me to mark these subprime mortgages as fantastic as prime loans. You got it. No problem. But here you have it. You know, that's our system here. And so you got Donald Trump pretty openly letting us know in a very most transparent administration ever that the Fed is no longer independent, and he's replacing Powell, and he's ensuring that he's only talking to candidates that are interested in a lower interest rate. Let's continue. Trump said he thought the next Fed chair should consult with him on where to set interest rates. Typically, that's not done anymore. It used to be done routinely. It should be done, the president said. It doesn't mean I don't think he should do exactly what we say, but certainly where we are, I'm a smart voice and should be listened to. And there you go. There's an argument. Hey, listen, I'm the smartest, most common sense. And it's the idea that the guy who's supposed to be in an independent position wouldn't consult with the smartest guy who knows the most is a ridiculous way for another government agency to exist. I don't even think the Supreme Court should Supreme Court, because I'm more supreme with my thoughts. And so, you know, if they're going to sit down, all 8 of them, they're going to come to a conclusion. They might as well call me up, because obviously my thoughts are more supreme than they are. And then here's just the last thing I highlighted. We should have the lowest interest rate in the world, he said, which I'd love to hear more on that logic. I guess he doesn't want to have the strongest currency in the world. He doesn't want to have a strong dollar. He doesn't want to have the most reliable currency. He doesn't want to have the lowest inflation. But what Donald Trump does think is that we should have the lowest interest rate in the world. You got to be Donald Trump always wants to be the best. And one of the things he wants to be the best on is to have the weakest currency and the highest inflation and the most debt. And so in order to do that, you also need to have the lowest rate in the world. And so when he's hiring now, he needs to make sure that there's other people who are as smart as he are, and they understand that the only way that America can be successful is if we're competitive against other countries that basically just peg their interest rates to us anyways. And we need these people to we need other people to continue to demand our dollar and to lend us money. And the way to continue the scheme is to make sure that we pay them less when they lend us money. But listen, Donald Trump's the smartest. So, if we're not understanding it, it's because we just don't get Donald Trump's brilliance. All right. And then this just one random line. It made me laugh, but this is from another Wall Street Journal article. Fed officials diverge over inflation risks. And so apparently, usually when they vote, they are all in line. I think on the last vote it was different because there was one dissenting opinion. This one was even rarer because I believe there were 3 dissenting opinions. Yeah, the central bank voted 9-3. So I think it's pretty rare on an interest rate vote that you do have 3 dissenters. But I just love this line. All right, everyone brace yourselves. If we can just get the dust out of the air, fundamentally, rates can go down a fair amount from where they are today. Does anyone know what the fuck that means? There are a bunch of words in there. I don't know what he means by dust out of the air. I don't know what he means by that. I don't know how getting dust out of the... I mean, listen, I'm not so autistic that I think he is literally referring to dust in the air. I think he's referring to something in the economic environment that he wants to refer to as dust in the air. And I don't know what this distorted signal is that he thinks is getting in the way of lowering interest rates. Maybe he thinks that the faulty data about stronger jobs is the dust in the air, and that our economy is actually doing much worse than it is. And since Donald Trump temporarily shut down the government, and we don't have great economic reporting right now, we have dust in the air of us thinking that our economy is doing better than it is. And so really, we're not at risk for inflation because we can really juice the economy right now. And so if we could just get the honest, maybe that's what he's referring to, is that we don't have good numbers right now. Even Powell said that he thinks that employment is currently overstated, and that's why they're lowering interest rates. I'm also kind of working off headlines, but then again, sometimes I just remember these things because I remember the 3 and I had glanced at this. But if I've ever read a statement and I'm like, I don't know, I mean, it's fun. This is a guy, Goldsby, I think is he one of the Fed people? Yeah, that's the Chicago Fed president, Austin Goldsby. So this is the Chicago Fed president, as reporting to the Wall Street Journal. If you were looking for more clarity about the interest rate in our economy, the quoted sentence to give you better clarity on it is that if we can just get the dust out of the air, fundamentally, that's a fun word to throw in there, rates can go down a fair amount. Also, a fair amount. How do you want to define fair amount? What are the fundamentally? What are the fundamentals of this new economic indicator of dust in the air? All right, maybe you guys aren't as much of a fucking nerd as I am that you just thought that was a hilariously nonsense statement. All right, let's just skip this one. But oh no, we can read it. U.S. forces raid ship seizes cargo going to Iran. So we're pirating, dude. We're out in the world. We're seizing Iranian. We're seizing boats from Venezuela with oil going to Iran, and now we're seizing boats going from China to Iran. And so let's read this one line. The cargo consisted of components potentially useful for Iran's conventional weapons, one official said, adding that the shipment was destroyed. The seized components were dual-use items with both civilian and military applications, the official said. And it just seems like they're doing everything they can to erase all of evidence of these situations. It's a little bit like when they blew up the 2 remaining survivors in the double tap boat strike. It's like, we can't have these guys sticking around for people to actually find out that maybe they weren't running drugs. I'm not saying they weren't running drugs, but this is the same thing where they're not actually saying that weapons were being shipped. They're saying that it was potentially useful for Iran's conventional weapons with dual use items. And can we see the items? or if these items were, are actually valuable, why not bring them back to the United States of America? Why not steal the items? America first, baby, or steal the technology. But instead what they did was just go, hey, trust us. We took a boat with items on it, and they were definitely potentially able to be used as weapons, but also we burned them, so don't ask us for any information about what they were. All right. We got more topics, everybody. And I guess the last topic for today is we're going to take a little bit of a look at the Donald Trump retraction from saying I'm all for showing the footage of the boat strike to then turning it around and going after the media for asking him about it and declining that he had ever said that he was going to do it. And then also, obviously, there's the conversations about who's going to buy Warner Brothers. Warner Brothers owns CNN. And I believe that this is a clip of Donald Trump talking about if he's going to involve himself in who purchases CNN. All right, let's roll the clip, and then we can comment from there.
Warner Brothers been doing owners of Warner Brothers Discovery to make changes at CNN, big changes, and have you spoken to Jared about it? What are you doing with him, or get you sort of wall him off a little bit?
So what do you want to know?
What changes do you want to see at CNN under new ownership?
Well, I'm not involved in that. I will be probably involved, maybe involved in the decision. It depends. You have some good companies bidding on it. I think the people that have run CNN for the last long period of time are a disgrace. I think it's imperative that CNN be sold, because you certainly wouldn't want to put people, just leave those people with some money, good money, and CNN, so that they can spend even more money spreading poison, because it's lies. It's a disgrace. So I wouldn't want to see the same company end up with CNN, the same company with money, because right now they don't have too much money, but they have value, I guess, based on the bids. So they've got value. But I think CNN should be sold, because I think the people that are running CNN right now are either corrupt or incompetent.
And that'll be a factor in the decision making, because we've got some.
Well, in my mind, but I can be talked out of that by some very talented people that we have.
You guys think that's the role of the president, is if a cable news channel is not doing well enough for its audience, that the president should step in and make sure that it's sold to other people who will do what he views as better news? I mean, sure sounds like authoritarian censorship, doesn't it? If you're going to hold up a sale, get in the way of a sale, try and make sure that something gets sold to somebody else, so that, listen, I'm not a fan of CNN. CNN, call it what it is, Democratic propaganda network. So maybe you go, hey, listen, they've been cheating the whole time, and they've somehow figured out how to have this CNN thing, and so he's going to cheat them back. Maybe that's an argument, but I don't love this. This is these are the kind of things you're not actually supposed to say out loud. It's a little bit like the Fed talk, where, yeah, obviously I'm the smartest and I think we should have low interest rates, so I'm interviewing people and making sure that they're in agreement with me. And if they're not swearing loyalty to my low interest rate agenda, I'm obviously not hiring them. And so once again, this is a behind closed doors type thing, where if you want to exert your power and influence to get rid of the bad coverage that you don't like, which even though I'm not a fan of CNN, CNN's got its agenda. And listen, you want to go prove criminal behavior over at CNN, or what John Brennan's relationship with the CIA is, that you go from working at the CIA to seemingly just working at a different job for the CIA, that you're now on cable news pitching the CIA's agenda. That just sounds to me like you're still at your same job. So go prove the criminal behavior that they've engaged in and go after them for that. But, just going, hey, listen, I'm going to use the authority that I have in this high position I have to engage in censorship because I don't like the coverage that they do. That doesn't feel very like a free America. Let's continue.
Yeah, antitrust people, but I just think that the people that have run CNN into the ground, by the way, nobody watches, very few people watch. I don't think they should be entrusted with running CNN any longer. So I think any deal should be guaranteed and certain that CNN is part of it, or sold separately. But I don't think the people that are running that company right.
There you go. Not going to prove anything unless CNN is definitely being sold. And hopefully it's to, my friends over at Israel who are looking to buy TikTok and ensure better coverage. And, we need people that are going to sell a Venezuela war. All right, now let's watch this.
Facing calls from Democrats to release more video of this controversial strike against an alleged cartel boat smuggling drugs into the U.S. Tonight, President Trump saying his administration would.
I don't know what they have, but whatever they have, we'd certainly release, no problem.
It comes amid.
All right, and now here was the second time. All right, so I got to tell you guys, other people have played these two clips, and they made it look worse than it was because they only jumped to they cut out like the middle section. This is bad. Donald Trump did say, we'll release the clips, and then he turns around and goes, I never said that. You guys said that. But then they cut out the little in-between part and just go right to Donald Trump, like Mean Girls, Real Lives of the Ladies of Washington, D.C., and starts just going, you're disgusting. And they kind of cut out the middle chunk to make it look even worse, where he only attacked her once he had already responded to that question. They decided to re-ask the question, and so he was somewhat right to be being like, hey, you fucking scumbag, I just gave an answer to that. Why are you re-asking me it? So other people gave it a worser edit, but even so, he does totally 180 it from, yes, we will release that, to I never said that. So with that said, for the context of bad but not as bad as what other people were showing, let's actually watch the full clip. Roll it, producer man. Working on Sundays. This guy, he's stepping up his game.
You said that you would have Mr. President, you said you would have no problem with releasing the full video of that strike on September 2nd off the coast of Venezuela. Secretary Hegseth now says...
You said that. I didn't say that. This is ABC fake news.
You said that you would have no problem releasing the full bit. Okay, well, Secretary Hegseth...
Whatever Hegseth wants to do is okay with me.
He now says it's under review. Are you ordering the Secretary to release that full video?
Whatever he decides is okay with me. So every boat we knock out of the water, every boat, we save 25,000 American lives. That was a boat loaded up with drugs. I saw the video. They were trying to turn the boat back to where it could float. And we didn't want to see that because that boat was loaded up with drugs just like everything else. But every boat we shoot down, and I don't know if you know, we're 92 or 94% down in drugs coming in by the sea. And we're trying to find who are the 6%. Because I don't know, people aren't liking to drive boats right now loaded up with drugs. But every single, think of that,
awesome
every single boat we shoot out, on average, we save 25,000 American lives. Do you feel okay about that, Court?
Keep us safe.
Okay, I know my man. What about you? Are you okay with that?
Totally fine with that. Are you committed to releasing the full video?
Didn't I just tell you that?
You said that it was up to Secretary Hegseth.
You're the most obnoxious reporter in the whole place. Let me just tell you, you are an obnoxious, a terrible reporter. And it's always the same thing with you. I told you, whatever Pete Hegseth wants to do is okay with me.
So I'm just telling you, other channels, they made an edit where they went directly to that second one, and he did retract and try and pretend like, I never said that. You guys said that I was going to release it, but that edit did make it seem worse. All right, I think I got 2 more videos, and then we're going to... go over to the paywall, robbernsteincomedy.com. It's all $5. We're going to be doing more paywalled content, including full porch tour videos and other stuff. And if you guys have any problems signing up, it's our first time doing it. You can just shoot me an email, robsnewsroom@gmail.com. We are going to get the site cleaned up, including having all of my content up there, so it's not just victims to if YouTube wants to take things down. But it's our first time, so, figure it out as we go. All right, let's watch this. I don't even know what it is.
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow.
All right, so this is about the Venezuela oil tanker that we seized. And Donald Trump, smartest guy ever. No one's ever run a government better. No one ever does anything better. They ask him about it, and let's see what he says.
What happens to the oil on that ship? Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You're a good newsman. Just follow the tanker.
Do you know where we're going? Was it going
Follow
to
it. Get a helicopter and follow the tanker.
Is it true it's going to
But we're
Cuba?
gonna.
I love it. I know that this is a big story, and I know that this was a decision that my administration made, but I have no information for you, and I don't actually know anything about it. And now we've got Maduro. And I do have a question. Firstly, we've already explored as to why, if it's true that this guy has offered to just step down, why we're not just taking that offer. It's also a little bit surprising that there's like, what you guys tell me in the chat, is there a $20 million or a $50 million bounty on his head? Like, how come there's no SEAL team guy who's no longer in the Army who just wants to go down there and do this himself and make the money? Are they not allowed to do it? If you're retired from the United States military, are you allowed to just go rocky a mission, get your troops together, just go down there and take a guy out? Like, are assassin movies that we watch just so cartoonishly not true that there's no assassins in the world, that if the United States government puts up a $50 million bounty, there's nobody that wants to get out there and just go kill a dude and make $50 million from the United States government? Or do they just assume that the United States government's not going to pay up? Would it be funny if Putin just did and been like, hey, can I have my $50 million? But here you've got Maduro, and, you know, you got to give this guy some credit. He's got some style to him. I wonder if Donald Trump's going to fire back some dance moves and perhaps, you know, escalate this with maybe we could settle this thing with a good old-fashioned dance-off. But here you've got Maduro responding to the boats being seized, and you know, he's a dictator, so he's got to in his own way with his own style showcase, hey, I'm not rattled. And here's Maduro dancing and letting us know that he's not rattled by everything that's happening. Let's watch it.
As the White House continues its campaign against suspected Venezuelan drug boats, President Trump delivers another warning to President Nicolas Maduro.
This is a good video, though, but I've had enough real news for today. This is Rand Paul basically saying that before we get involved in a war, it should at least go to Congress, and I don't think anyone in this audience would disagree with that. All right, we're going over to my website. First time ever. Come hang out. RobBernsteinComedy.com. It's all of $5. And we'll be doing more exclusive content over there.